Alrighty, I'm streaming and I'm zooming, and I have posted the Zoom call info into the chat. Anybody who wants to join is welcome to. Alright, and now I'm going to start in Adobe Fresco because Adobe Fresco has the advantage of producing finished artwork in a very short period of time, which is good for feeding the social media. All right, but I need to. There we go. Let's do a square. Okay, go, go, go. There we are. It's a toilet. Not what I intended to draw. Anyway. Let's see. Let's bring in some reference. Let's pop on over to Instagram. Here, let's do this. Insta. Alrighty, let's. Where are my saved documents? How do I find my saved documents? What's this? Interesting. These are not my saved documents. I don't know what that icon is. Huh. All right, well, let's just look for a photograph to use as reference. That's not a photo. Do that. Sure. Let's see, let's all right. It is a new year and a new month. There. Didn't leave myself enough room. All right. Still didn't leave myself enough room. It's wild how far the ground is from the middle of her back there. Let's try again. This is where it would be helpful to be able to zoom in and out. So look what she's doing with her toe there. She looks more like a dancer than a yogini. All right, now my desire normally would be to rotate her so that she's in a more upright position, draw her that way, and then rotate the finished drawing to be, upside down again. But this is more of a right brain challenge, is to try to draw what you see and what you know, but to prioritize what you see. So this isn't my usual sketchy type drawing. I mean, it's still constructionist, but oh yeah, the hair. But really, I'm building up shapes. All right. Now. Actually giving her a thicker waist than she really has. Yeah, don't really like that. Let's try the pen. I like that better. Okay. Yeah. Ooh, too big. Maybe too small. All right, stick with it. Well, anyway. That's sufficient warm-up for now, I think. Well, maybe put some background on. How about that? I've got some red brick. Except I've got the angle way off. Because you barely see any to the right of her knee. So really the red brick's just up here. All right. We'll make some coffee. A couple people viewing, nobody interacting though. Let's see. All right. Alrighty. Now let's get back to business. Actually, now let's make a pot of coffee. Tell you what, I'm going to put on some music and make the coffee. This one. Alrighty, I know most of the people who tune in to this thing don't really tune in to watch me draw. They tune in to hear me jabber about stuff, and I'm not jabbering. So what can be done? Well, you could ask me a question, or I could play something that I've recorded for the podcast but not used yet. Although that recording is on a different computer. So that would involve me getting up, walking away from the drawing for a while. Okay, I'm totally faking the perspective here. Should I actually define some vanishing points and get this in properly? Let's see. No, but I will go to, I think I have a guidelines layer. Perspective guide. Yeah. So there's zero perspective going on here. This is me just keeping things somewhat symmetrical. Can you hear the gurgling coffee maker in the background? Oh, sketch. Alright, I can zoom in with this one, so let's do that. Let's do that. No. Where's opacity? Oh, that's the eraser. I don't think we need his tentacles down there at all. Ho, Ben Rubber. Was wondering after I listened to your Volt podcast this morning about where the energy for lithium batteries comes from, and then the EORI on refining it from soil WE, whatever it was it comes from. I'll try to look it up. So, as I'm pretty sure I stated, or Eric stated in the conversation, lithium is sort of like hydrogen fuel cells. It's not an energy source, it's an energy storage medium. But because it is a technology, it enjoys the the cost advantages that come with economies of scale. The energy is a separate issue. Where it comes from. These days, mostly coal and natural gas, some nuclear, but an ever-growing proportion of solar, wind, and geothermal. It's interesting if you Google which country produces the most geothermal energy, who do you think it is? My guess would have been Iceland, because they have so much geothermal activity there. But of course, the leader by a huge margin, a Trumpian huge margin, is the United States, of course. Yes, energy returned on energy invested. So yeah, EROI doesn't come into account when you're talking about batteries, because you're not getting energy out of them. So energy returned on energy invested only applies when you're talking about energy sources. How much does it cost? How much energy does it cost to access a particular source of energy? And that just it's not appropriate to talk about when it comes to storage. All right. My coffee is done. Alrighty. Background ink. So that beep is my computer offering to turn on sticky keys, which I don't even know what that is. But apparently something about how I hit the shift key when I'm drawing horizontal or vertical lines tells my device here that I want to use sticky keys, whatever that is. I don't really need it on the other side, do I? What? All right. Here it is again. No to the sticky keys. I'm going to attempt the Zoom thing. Right on. Let's see. I might have to let you in. Let's take a look here. Admit. Check, check. Hello. Ben a Rubber, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Cool beans.
Welcome.
Thanks. Yeah, other thing I was gonna put in the chat, might as well say. I wasn't sure, since there's not much energy coming elsewhere, most of it fossil fuels, that we would use it for cars. I don't know if we would rather have power tools or cars. And it's pretty late to remake the landscape in a way that uses less energy.
No. Definitely not too late to do that. I mean, infrastructure has to be maintained. And there comes a point where it's cheaper just to abandon the old, very energy-intensive infrastructure and build something that's much more energy efficient.
Yeah, sooner than later. Be better.
I mean, it's happening. The U.S. government's not taking much of a lead on it, but private industries going ahead on their own, and other countries are forging ahead.
Right. It wasn't Germany. Germany was doing well in that because they actually charged $6 a gallon or so for gas.
For transportation fuel, yeah, it's pretty expensive. When I lived in Australia, they sold it in liters. Liter is quarter of a gallon or third of a gallon, and the price for a liter of gasoline in Australia in 2002 was more than the price of a gallon of gasoline here in the U.S. So yeah, we definitely have very cheap petroleum here in the U.S.
Yeah.
Not as cheap as in places like Saudi Arabia or Iraq. Oil-producing nations tend to have very cheap oil or oil subsidies for their citizens.
Yeah. And we're sort of producers, but it's the shale. And then I had just read Kunstler's blog for the year, and you had said that usually they're pretty apocalyptic. And this one was sort of like reading his novels, the World Made by Hand novel.
Oh, yeah? I'll have to go back and take a look at that.
Yeah, it was really long.
They tend to be. His year-end predictions, they tend to be pretty thick.
Yeah.
And
it's nice that something decides the election.
I would love to I'm not going to take the time to do it myself, but I would love to see somebody, comb back through 10 years of his year-end predictions and give him an actual numerical score.
I know. Yeah, you had said that they're usually apocalyptic, and I don't know how you keep doing that, not change, but
well,
otherwise,
the same need exists. People want to hear that.
Yeah.
Here, let me show you a neat tweet that I saw today, and I retweeted it. Let's go to, let's see, pop this over here. And I'm not particularly adroit with Twitter. I'm not going to look at my own tweets. I think I have to go home and then click on this.
I may have seen it.
It's very new. I just put it up. Here it is. In my humble opinion, tech pessimism was always about aesthetics, signaling, and a certain personality type. But the substantive case for it that did exist has totally eroded. This will be clear to everyone within 10 years. Well, I disagree with that last part. I don't think it will be clear to everyone, because I think the people who have a psychological need for, an impending collapse, that need will continue, and it's not really all that malleable in the face of evidence. So I disagree with that last sentence, but the rest of it I agree with.
Yeah. Have you read Greer's Apocalypse Not?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's that one, and then another he had sort of the psychology, the need for that, I think. Not sure.
I think the first time I interviewed John Michael Greer, it was about Apocalypse Not. And that would have been like in 2008 or 2009.
I'm not sure iTunes goes back that far.
iTunes? You get the CD-ROM? Oh yeah, I guess iTunes. Yeah. A lot of the middle of the archive is just missing, even from the CD-ROM.com website, simply because it costs a lot of money to host all those really big audio files. Okay, I'm looking around for the browser tab that has my drawing in it, and there is no such animal. I just have to get this thing off the screen entirely. There we go. Alrighty. So what were some of...
two other things.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you had said at one point in one of your podcasts that you had noticed in yourself the desire to be a farmer kind of made you desire to have a peak oil or, get rid of all this easy energy because it sort of corrupts our lifestyles. And I think I had the same thing going. I really wanted to look back at your old podcast when you were more sympathetic to peak oil and see if I could sort of root it out in myself as well.
So for that, you can do it. You just need to go to my website rather than using your podcast app.
The Patreon wouldn't work, or?
No. No, you'd want the free podcasts from back like in 2007, 2008. And you just won't find them on Patreon. Patreon is much newer than that, and I haven't gone back to repopulate, the archive with all my old free shows. So there's even Vault episodes which are not on Patreon. But it would take you a very long time to exhaust all the stuff that's on Patreon.
Well, no, a good one was one you had recently, I don't know if it was 4 years ago, of sort of summarizing the from your book, Conversations on Collapse.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure it got to Gail Tverberg. She's my latest sort of, like, I kind of obsess with different people who've put out content and kind of suck it all up. And her latest blog post was pretty yummy.
I haven't heard from her
Joseph
in years.
Tainter's.
So what is her website called? Is it Gail the Actuary? Is that the name of her website?
OurFiniteWorld.com.
Oh, right.
I think it's com.
World. Yep, there we go. Very familiar WordPress blog. Or is it Blogger?
I think it is WordPress.
Okay. It's a very
Because I
familiar...
had subscribed
Yeah.
to a comment that I put, and then it started giving me all the responses to everyone else's, and I was really surprised how active she was on there. Is she in America?
You know, the one time I met her, it was in Pennsylvania. She might be Canadian though, but she's definitely from North America. Let's see. Many people
It must
believe.
be she.
Go ahead.
Sorry, it must be she stayed up really late New Year's Eve. She was commenting, and one of them was pretty raunchy. She must have had a certain amount of wine. I like how she talks about that.
Wow, I never got that vibe from her. She was always pretty straight laced, buttoned down. Back in the oil drum days, that's where I knew her. She used to be a regular participant on the oil drum, and she posted under the name Gail the Actuary.
Yeah, I realized that I had met her um, when I was looking at all of her content and enjoying it, and I remembered I worked at it was a girls' school, Wells College in Aurora,
Uh-huh.
building and grounds, and then the Society for Biophysical Economics had a conference there in 2018, and I took off a couple days to for one of them, or no, I took off one day for one, and um, I was at the time reading Charles Eisenstein's mushy, I think, Sacred Economics or something, and I had just made a comment about debt, and then she said how we needed it, and she's basically right. It's kind of a future lean on, like Nate Hagen says, a future lean on
To claim on future labor.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nate Hagens is another name from like the early peak oil years, and I interviewed him once, but I've not kept up with his output in recent years. But as I understand it, he's moved on from peak oil as well. Is that correct? I mean, as I say, I haven't kept up, so I'm just talking out my ass when I say that.
It seems like he's still sympathetic to that, peak oil. I think a couple years ago or a year ago, he did a YouTube video about, it was called The Global Amoeba, kind of describing the global economy and how it extracts, and that the energy is tightly correlated with GDP, and then we, like, at some point just assumed that like we confused the two or something. I don't know. It's hard to. That's why I have to write stuff down, because I suck at re-explaining it, regurgitating it.
Whereas I suck at writing stuff down. I used to write like a madman, and I just can't seem to bring myself to do it anymore.
Was that like 20 years ago or like 5 years ago?
I think I had started to taper off 5 years ago, but I was still writing. And now I'm just not. For me, it's a real struggle to come up with a 150 word episode description.
Yeah, your rambling skills are second to none. Well, not rambling, but you usually have a lot to say on stuff. So
my talking into a microphone with only a very loose plan. That's my approach, and it's really born of laziness. There's no positive spin to put on it, really. Now, Dan Carlin, he does that as well, but I think he comes into the recording studio with much fuller notes than I have. He may not have a very good idea of how he's going to, cover all of the subject, but at least he's got like a lot of direct quotes that he can just lift and start reading from. Whereas frequently when I'm recording, you can't hear it because I edited it out, but I'll be talking and then I'll say, wait, is that right? Is that even right? And then I'll go and I'll read, and then I'll come back and I'll do a second pass on it, but you don't hear me questioning myself and going and checking things, because that all gets cut out.
That's how that works.
That's how that works, yes. And there's also, I'll just take many passes to try to get the wording right on something. So I'll say something, I'm like, is that right? Is that how I want to say it? And I'll say it again. I was like, that's good, but I sound angry. Let's try again. And then comes the editing. Let's see.
I had attempted that for a few videos on YouTube, just putting the phone in front of me,
Uh-huh.
and as soon as it's there, there's like the hyper awareness of thinking about what I look like and what I sound like, and it's sort of like a paralysis.
Yeah.
You know, I might lose a train of thought. I had done a whole bunch of scribbling earlier, well, last spring, and then I had already had trouble sleeping, and then there got to a point in March where I slept for like an hour a night for 4 days straight. So,
Oof.
and so I'm bipolar, and I guess that's how that works.
Hmm.
And then, yeah.
I really need sleep. I don't do well on short sleep.
Most humans don't.
But most humans, they have to, at least in industrial civilization, they have to come to some accommodation with the world around them because the world around them demands a certain amount of their time.
Yeah.
And I have gone to great lengths to structure my life such that, I have more time than most people do. And part of that time I use to sleep. Like if I wake up and I have slept for less than 7 hours, I give myself, the full opportunity to go back to sleep. It doesn't always work, so sometimes.
Yeah, that's how I'd like to function.
Yeah. Like I
You ever
almost
notice
never have to set an alarm.
If you get less than 6 hours, I'll notice I'll have more energy, sort of like it's the adrenaline thing.
Yeah.
Throughout the day, but then you'll feel it in a couple days.
Indeed. Sleep is good. We'll just leave it at that. Let's see. What am I doing?
Am I distracting you from your drawing?
Nope. No. That's
all right. Cool.
I'm happy to draw and talk. Particularly what I'm doing right now is it doesn't require much in the way of creativity. It's all pretty much algorithmic at this point.
So where do these drawings get used?
In a comic strip called Geb. You can find it at geb.io. It's gebb.io.
Oh yeah, I've seen that link. That was a link to your stream or something.
Come on. Yeah, this is for a political organization. It's called, what is it? Institute for Sound Public Policy. But that just got made up for the comic. Really, the organization is Progressives for Immigration Reform. And
interesting.
Yeah, so I get I charge an hourly rate to make these comics, which is nice because it means I actually get paid to do creative work, but I don't get anything on the back end. Like I don't own these characters, even though I created them. See, I couldn't sell merch or anything like that. Let's see, character tones. And I do have my own, comic characters that I made up that are my intellectual property, but since I don't get paid to draw them, I rarely do.
Are you allowed to draw them without a certain bureaucratic button?
No, I say I have a different set of characters that are mine, that I created, not on anybody's behalf, but just for myself. That's not what I'm doing here.
They're not like patented or whatever?
Well, they're my intellectual property. They are copywritten, but they're copyrighted, but it's my copyright. No, I'll show you those characters. Let's see.
Was that one of the stickers you had?
I do have stickers of one of my characters, yeah. It's not the one that I put up on Instagram today. Let's see, I'll call it up and show it to you. Let's see. say. Can we open it in Fresco? Sure, let's do that. All right. These are my two main characters. And I've been drawing them since I was in college. They're my creation. So I was planning to have them as sort of sitting off on the side of my videos and commenting in word balloons, just sort of a meta commentary or meta content on top of what I'm saying. But that's very, very time and labor intensive, and I didn't stick with it long enough to really establish it. But let's see.
It was weird. I guess I can't look at the feed while I'm on the video.
Oh, I bet you can select a different. Select your web browser. Are you Mac or are you on Windows?
I'm on my phone.
Oh, okay.
Probably not.
All right. Well, yeah. And is it Android or iOS?
iOS.
All right. About your phone experience, I don't get the whole Apple thing at all. And it's ironic because my first computer was an Apple II Plus, like in 1980, I don't know, 82. But then, and I used Macs all through college, but I didn't own one. I just used the Macintosh computers in the computer lab at my university. And then when I left school and I had to buy my own computer and I looked at the price differences between Macs and PCs, I got a PC and I've been on PC ever since. That was in 96.
Yeah, a similar thing happened to me, but with music recording.
Mm-hmm.
I got used to using GarageBand because it was free.
Right.
And then I went to Pro Tools because our drummer was recording with that, and I learned a couple things on it. But I had a similar experience with you and your iPad on one of your podcasts. You were talking about having a hard time not smashing it because you couldn't figure out how to do the simplest thing.
Right.
And I was doing the same thing. I couldn't even figure out how to move the cursor to start recording in a different spot. And I would go online looking for it. I couldn't find it and just wasted my time and lost my creative energy. And
nothing kills creativity like
making music.
Yeah, nothing kills creativity like struggling with. Yeah. So when I started doing the podcast, I used Audacity. That was the name of the program. It was an open source, free audio editing program. A lot of that was the standard for most, upstart podcasters back in the beginning. And I switched over to Adobe Audition in 2013 or so. And yeah, it was a rough transition, but I would never go back. Now that I'm familiar with Audition, it just takes much longer to do everything in Audacity. And this program I'm using here to draw with is Clip Studio Paint, and it's absurdly complicated. And I don't use it, I don't use most of its functionality, but what it does do for me, it's really good. And it's much better for me than trying to draw in Photoshop. Although I know lots of people swear by drawing in Photoshop.
Yeah, my friend got trained on that. She had a degree in bookology. I forget what the word for that is. Because Wells College had a book, like a press.
Oh, bookbinding? Oh.
I think it's not.
You're talking about they have a press as in they publish books, but you're not talking about a physical press.
Calligraphy. That's what it was. That's not really the same thing.
Nice. And what did she use for calligraphy? What program?
She was trained in Adobe, so she had bought that program, and she didn't have a computer, so she put it on mine. We were dating at the time.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about
Now we're
Photoshop?
just good friends.
The program that she put on your computer, was that Photoshop?
Yeah, Adobe.
Well, Adobe is a
Photoshop.
company. They make lots of different software packages. And Adobe Photoshop is their raster-based, image editor, and Adobe Illustrator is their vector-based. And I would think that for somebody into calligraphy, they would want a vector-based program, because you can change things, you can enlarge and shrink and never lose any fidelity. Whereas if you have a raster-based image and you blow it up, it gets really ugly looking.
I recognize those words from geographic information systems.
Geographic information systems. That's there's another guy who is often in these chats. His name is Paul. He's in Texas, and he works for the state government, and he does work in GIS. I'm not sure exactly what he does with it, but that is something that I hear reference to in these live streams from time to time.
Yeah, it's pretty cool once you can figure it out. That was another thing I was banging my head over. I got a GIS program, a free one. And I got an associate's in it, but that program's like a yearly fee I didn't want to do. It's not Paul Surigo, starts with a C, like Surigo or something.
This is the name of a software program?
You know the Paul, I know another Paul who...
No.
He's on...
The Paul I'm talking about is Doherty is his last name.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had wanted to look at the watershed around here, upstate New York, Finger Lakes region. Our street that we live on floods. It was every other year. The past couple of years has been each. The street doubles as a stream, and the drainage can't handle it.
Yeah.
And if you look at the topology or whatever, the road's right where the valley was, so probably should have never built a neighborhood there.
Well, I think there's a lot of residential neighborhoods that meet that description here in the U.S. This used to be farmland. It should have stayed farmland. But
Yeah.
people don't want to live in the city, so what can you do? Let's see.
It seems like we should live a little more dispersed throughout the population. What do you think about that? Like, I know you had Dmitry Orlov blog post you were talking about, and like the evil elites had wanted that to be the case, and I think, I don't know, if it comes to down to food, fiber, and shelter not being highly concentrated in areas where people are living really densely, so it requires people to drive an Elon Musk Tesla car in to get what they need, but have it more dispersed so that you can walk. But I don't know.
I prefer a walkable existence, and it's easier to do in a city. In terms of each individual's carbon footprint, city dwellers tend to use a lot less of it. If you live out in the country, basically, you have a 20-mile driveway.
Yeah.
But if you live out in the country and you don't have to commute into the city every day to work, or commute to some far-flung exurb or something, it can be very sustainable. But for people who just don't want to live in the city, but they still need to interface with the city economically every day, living in the country is just an extravagance.
Yeah.
From my perspective. Let's see. Background. Yeah. Okay, so I get into this thing. Where? Background ink? Yeah. Okay, select it. There we go. Okay. So many layers, I get lost. So you say you're in upstate New York?
Yeah, you had calculated it before. It's like a 5-hour drive west. I'm in Auburn, New York,
Okay. I recognize
like
that
the center of
name.
the Finger Lakes.
Yeah, I think I have friends who live over that way. Um, is that near Ithaca?
Yeah, it's like a 50-minute drive, 50 minutes.
So not that near.
Yeah, it's like an hour south, and my wife's from Mexico, New York, so we're kind of like in the middle of the important things.
Well, I lived in Brooklyn for 5 years, and that was great. I really enjoyed that. I would love to do that again. But I'm glad I wasn't in Brooklyn for COVID-19. That would have sucked.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I've probably mentioned it in a podcast or two that you've listened to, but just before COVID happened, I was preparing to move to Puerto Rico. Like I had just come back
because
from there.
their taxes are nicer or non-existent or something.
Well, yeah, the tax situation is nice. You don't have to pay federal income tax if you live there, so that's nice. But also, it's cheaper, and for what I'm paying to live in an apartment here in the middle of nowhere, I could I could rent an apartment in an actual city and be amongst people doing interesting things, and that's what I was really excited about. And I've been meaning to learn Spanish. Yeah, I sure do like some of their food.
I mean, more nutritious, I think.
There's a lot of big round people in Puerto Rico, I have to say. I mean, I saw more like really, really fat people there than I've seen since I lived like in Arkansas.
Huh.
But I was mostly in San Juan, so maybe it's different out in the countryside. Let's see, background. Yeah. All right. So you've read.
Well, I'm gonna check out.
Okay. Well, thanks for checking in. I was going to ask you about other things that you had read. You'd mentioned reading Apocalypse Not by John Michael Greer.
No, I haven't read that one.
Oh, you
yet.
haven't?
Right now, I'm reading Plows, Plagues, and Petroleum by William F. Rudiman.
No, I don't know that one. When was that written?
Yeah, he's a climate scientist. I think 2003 or 4. But it was really cool to get the perspective of kind of how ice ages work. There's a 100,000 year cycle of the eccentricity of the orbit, which I think it's 9 million. Oh crap! No, it varies by 3 million miles, so it gets closer to the sun. So that's one factor that will melt the glaciers. And then there's another cycle that having to do with the wobble of the spin at the top,
right,
the planet,
which coincides with the precession of the equinoxes. That's like a 32,000 year cycle.
Well, there's 41, I think, and then 22,000 year cycle. So there's 3 that get smaller, and I forget which of the last two was which.
How about Radio EcoShock? Have you ever listened to that?
Oh yeah, it was Jupiter, the pull of the gravity of Jupiter. That sounds familiar. Radio EcoShock, the podcast.
Yeah, well, it's also a radio show in various markets, but I mostly know it as a podcast. Alex Smith, I think, is the podcaster.
Oh, nope, I don't know that one very well. I think I've seen it when scrolling.
That's pretty old school, and it's been around for a long time. But it tends to be...
I listened to one at one point.
That one tends to be maximally alarmist in terms of, climate catastrophe. But
oh yeah,
he gets good guests and he presents good information. So if you know that bias going in, then you can correct for it and still get a lot out of the podcast.
Yeah, maybe it was Derek Jensen or something. I think I listened to one of his podcasts because I was gobbling up a certain whoever I was on at that point.
So I've interviewed Derek Jensen a few times, once in person in his hometown in Northern California at a bookstore that he was, advocating for and promoting. Oh, put that on the wrong layer. Okay. But he and Lierre Keith, who's, a collaborator of his, they got into trouble with the SJW crowd because part of their their worldview is that there is a difference between men and women, and that if a man has his penis surgically removed, it doesn't make him a woman, and he shouldn't necessarily be welcomed into all women's spaces. And that today is called transphobia, and so he's caught up in really ugly culture war battles, or at least he was the last time I was paying attention to him, which is funny because it seems like what a weird hill for him to die on. It just doesn't seem to have a lot to do with his core message, but
no. Yeah, I didn't realize he had gotten gobbled up by them.
Oh yeah. And then Lierre Keith, his collaborator, she's a former vegan, and she wrote a book called The Vegetarian Myth, basically talking about how all the supposed health benefits of vegetarianism are nonsense. And so the vegans really hate her, and man, you don't want vegans to hate you because they are fanatical. So
yeah, I remember around here in Auburn, there's a band called If Hope Dies, and they actually had a music video on MTV at one point. But so if you've ever heard like hardcore thrash metal, my friends and I would go to the shows, and there'd just be, some people were obviously there just to try to get into a fight, like accidentally hit someone and see if they can get into it. Right. And I remember that was the first I was exposed to veganism. They were there presenting that and showing some gruesome stuff, and oh wow, I'm good.
Yeah, so Lierre Keith was giving a talk at, I think it was it was in some sort of auditorium, so it wasn't a bookstore. Maybe it was a university or something. But at the end of her talk, a couple of these black-clad, black bloc dressed militants came on stage, and they each had, just a pie pan filled with whipped cream, and they threw it in her face. And that seems, it's rude, but it seems harmless, right? Just, whipped cream in the face. But they had mixed in cayenne pepper, lots of cayenne pepper into the whipped cream. So really, it was like mace to the face or pepper spray.
Wow. That's assault, brother.
Well, it depends on your point of view. It's a blow for animal liberation from some people's perspective. So, yeah, I'm certainly on team assault there. I agree, it is assault.
Yeah, calculating the moral scratches here and there. The one that bugs me the most is Joel Salatin.
Yeah.
There was a African American, Native American who had written an article which I had read when it first came out, and I thought made really good points. And maybe I'm in denial or something. I've talked about it with my wife a lot. Like, he's Joel Salatin. You've heard of him, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Everything I Want to Do Is Illegal. What are some of his other books? This Ain't Normal, Folks.
Right.
Yeah, he was a big character in one of Michael Pollan's books, The Omnivore's Dilemma.
Yeah.
So anyway,
yeah,
yes.
There's, I guess, the clash of, having bootstraps and pulling them up, and then the almost impossible situation for a lot of African Americans to get into farming without having generations and generations of inherited wealth. It's a true thing. It really sucks, and it's a mess. And I just finished The Color of Law, so that kind of spoke to it a little bit. And it's really sticky because the culture had essentially advocated against the 13th Amendment or 14th, I forget.
13th.
For African Americans to not have a badge of slavery or to be second-class citizens anyway. And so the government ended up helping push it the wrong direction. And the worst part is there were a lot of integrated neighborhoods that ended up becoming segregated by where they placed the schools and all that. So it was just really rough to see one of my heroes there getting all torn down. And he did handle himself a little bit questionably here and there. So,
well, the issue I have with Joel Salatin is not particular to him. It's there's a business model in organic farming which depends on free labor from organizations like WOOF, which is worldwide workers on organic farms, or worldwide opportunities on organic farms. But basically, there's lots of people who really would love to get into farming, but as you say, they don't have inherited wealth, they don't have any land, they don't really have any way to do it, they don't have any experience. And so to get started, they'll sign up with WOOF and they'll go and work on somebody's farm for free. And Joel Salatin's business model depends on that free labor.
I didn't know it depended on it. Interesting.
I mean, his business model just assumes that he doesn't have to pay, that he's going to get free labor from people who want to learn from him, and that he doesn't have to pay them. And
yeah, he has a lot of interns, and
yeah,
I guess, are they the same?
Yeah, I don't know if he's using woofers. He might be using interns, but it's the same idea. It's free labor, and that's also the Amish model. But the Amish model, they do it by having lots of kids, and the kids work on the farm, which from my perspective is a bit more honest than the Joel Salatin model. But I want to stress that this criticism that I have of Joel Salatin applies to a lot of organic farms. So he's not, any unique villain in that respect. And now that he's a celebrity, I mean, lots of people do want to come and hang out at his place.
Yeah.
So you said you read Sacred Economics, but you described it as mushy.
Yeah, I listened to it, so I'm not really going to remember anything. I'm starting to wonder if I should just only read books, but if I can read or listen to fiction books on Audible, those work. But yeah, it was maybe 4 years ago now. It's 2021. That I listened to it.
Yeah. Like complicated topics in nonfiction books, I do still listen to a lot of those on Audible, but my trick there is just to listen to the same book repeatedly. And then if I'm really digging it, but I don't think that I'm getting much, like I'm not retaining most of what's important, then I'll go and I'll buy it on Kindle. And if you already own the audiobook, you can typically buy the Kindle at a reduced price.
Oh, I'll look into that. I don't have any Kindle books, maybe one, but I prefer the physical smelly book in front of me.
I do too, but I've moved a lot over the course of my life, and when it comes to pack up all your belongings, books are very heavy, and Kindle books weigh nothing at all, and they take up no space.
Yeah, I don't even move around a lot, and I borrow them from the library. If I had every book that I've been reading the past several years, that would be a ton or so. I don't know. Probably not that much, but
there's a guy named Jim who does a podcast called the Attack Ads Podcast, and he's a regular guest of mine. He lives in Seattle. He drives a bus, but he's really into electric cars, and he was into the peak oil scene. I think he's grown out of it, but he's definitely very hostile to advertising. So that's what his show is about: attack ads, and there's an exclamation point after it. So it's it's a command, it's an imperative: attack ads. Anyway, I would highly recommend his show. It's very good.
All right. Yeah, you had him on your podcast recently.
Yeah. Well, he's somebody that I can pretty much call up on zero notice and say, "Hey, help me out. Help me record some material." But yeah, he's a smart guy, and the reason I thought of him is he gets books from the library, and he takes very, very detailed and careful notes, and then he keeps those notes in an organized fashion. And he might not have the book on hand, but he can make reference to it in great detail, years after the fact because of his systematic note taking. So
yeah, that's essentially what I'm doing.
Yeah, I admire that.
I'm not so systematic. Sometimes if I don't know, maybe if I'm not into the content or if I'm just generally tired, I'll just read and not put something in that I might regret later. I generally just, if something I find interesting, I'll put that in and record it. And then all of the things I'm interested in are sort of blend in with peak oil and how soil works, how the planet works, and how humans are sort of like, whoops, we might have broke it, but I'm sure there would have been any other way.
You broke it, you bought it.
I read a while ago, Energy and Civilization.
Mm-hmm. Who's the author?
I think Smil is the last name. Vaclav, maybe.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't what I expected. He had set off in the beginning that he would, calculate the labor in a certain pretty nice systematic way, but the rest of it was sort of just explaining like how awesome we are with all our inventions.
Mm-hmm.
I thought there would be more numbers involved, but I don't know, maybe I just missed it because it was, parts of it were rough to read. I had to just stick my head to the page. Megajoules a day he did. Calculating the cost of human labor is subtracted from the total use of calories in a day, of which the majority is consumed to maintain the physiology of the human body. The basal metabolic rate of a 70 kilogram adult male is about 7.5 millijoules per day. It is assumed that hard work raises the megajoules per day by 30%. But yeah, it was the big.
Were you reproducing all that from memory just now?
No, I pulled it up on my notepad.
Okay. I was about to be impressed.
Photographic autistic memory. But he had talked about how we started having more kids to help with labor.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as we did that, we needed more land. And then, so that's where the vicious cycle got more vicious, and here we are today. I don't think there's any other way around that. If you have one culture that does that, so.
Have you read Charles Mann's books, 1491 and 1493?
I listened to it a few years ago, so I didn't take notes.
But you got the gist of it.
Yeah. A lot of cultures around. I don't know, I might not have retained much of it at all. It was, I think 1491 I listened to. I didn't read 1493 yet.
Well, it's a good one. I like his take a lot. And then he's done an even more recent book called The Wizard versus the Prophet.
Yep. I listened to your interview with him.
Yeah. So I have that book on Audible, and I can go back and re-listen to that time and again. It is so well researched and so well reasoned, and I'm kind of like him. It's like, yeah, I feel like a wizard Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and a doomer or a prophet on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and then on alternate Sundays, I'm just kind of, I alternate between the two, or I'm both at once, or But yeah, yesterday's podcast talking about the electrification of transportation, definitely in the wizard mode there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun that I can't pinpoint you. I know that you've been past the peak oil wall.
Yeah, I'm largely defined by what I no longer am. So definitely not a doomer anymore, but not really a techno-optimist either. Although, the peak oil folk will say that I'm a techno-optimist because I say that, surveillance capitalism is a problem, and that data collection and training of AI with, data collected from us could be a problem in the future. And that sounds like techno-utopianism, because I'm not talking about, how the electricity grid's going down for good and how there will be no computers and no cars and,
Yeah. You assumed that the big machine was going to stay around.
Yes. And it shows every indication of doing just that. So, let's see. I don't know if this part made it into yesterday's podcast, but I was talking with my friend Eric about investing and how the market seems irrational. Stocks are way overvalued. And, there's the old aphorism, well, the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent, betting against it. Let's see.
The market can stay irrational longer than you can bet against it?
Longer than you can stay solvent. And then that's the end of the actual quote. I forget who said it, but it's clearer if you say longer than you can stay solvent betting against it.
Right.
About that.
Yeah, I've listened to a couple different people because I had been looking into the fall of the U.S. dollar, and a couple were saying that, well, one article said that at this point it's not possible to lose its value, and I don't know, it's sort of
behind that?
Flavored of the peak oil wish for things to fall apart so they can get more real, realizing having to use more of your actual energy to feed yourself and stay sheltered and all that.
Yeah, the wishful thinking aspect of the death of the dollar is that if you do have a great reset, if suddenly the dollar isn't really meaningful anymore, then all the people who have enormous fortunes that are denominated in dollars, they lose those fortunes, and that's sort of a wish fulfillment for people at the bottom of the pyramid. It's like, oh yes, all of this notional wealth is just going to go away, and we'll all be much closer to being equals. So I can see the attraction of it. And to me, the dollar losing its international like special drawing privileges, and being the one unit of exchange for trading petroleum, I think that definitely has a shelf life. We can't bet on that lasting forever. But getting the timing right on when that's actually going to change, that's tough, and I have no guess. Oh shoot! Let's see. For that. Huh, what's happening? So what have you been reading?
Well, I gotta head out.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining me. Have a good one.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
No worries.
Happy to talk about books more and more, so.
I'm here Monday through Friday.
Cool beans. Have fun. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Let's see. Here we are. Again. All right. Only one person tuned in. Who is it? Who's there? Who can it be now? All right. I think that may be it. I think we're done. Yeah. Oh, almost. Let's see. Capture tones. I remember putting this in already. All right. It's 4 o'clock. Let's see. Let's go back to Fresco. And let's all right. So let's work on this, but without the reference. We'll just polish it from here. Actually, let's get some more coffee. Coffee works better when poured in a cup. Yes. here's what I said I wished I could do in fresco. And that is just rotate the whole canvas. Let's see, which key did I assign that to? Not that one. Oh well. No. When I take it to that angle, I can really see how I've accentuated the size of her butt, which is a very popular thing to do. Let's see, we'll call this sketch. So A. All right, great. Yep, it is A. Very good. All right. Let's see. Ah, what did I just do? There we go. Hey Rodney, how you doing? I think you're the only one here. Oh, what have I done here? Huh. It's just not at full opacity. Huh. It is. Weird. Oh, because this is the pencil. Alright, let's try that. There we go. Oh, I should stop the Skype call or Zoom call. All right, let's bring in our reference image. Hey, Rodney. Thanks for that. All right, now let's take this one. Now let's just get rid of it actually. And let's go over to Photoshop. And we'll say File. Open. All right, let's get some lights on in here. All right. Hey, Rodney. No worries about the all caps. Not a problem. All right. There we are. That's today's drawing. That'll be on Instagram tomorrow. All right. Alrighty, I think I'm done. 4:58. I think I can quit 2 minutes early. So that is all. Talk to you all tomorrow. I can